This is the Nicole Harris Podcast. Welcome to the Nicole Harris Podcast, and joining me today is hair extraordinaire, my favorite natural hairstylist, and probably the baddest loctician coming out of the DMV area. This is the beautiful Renee. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for the warm invite and intro.
Yes, I had to. Well, I didn't have to gas you up. It's all true. But, welcome to the show. And for those of you who don't know, Renee's mother and my mother are sisters, so we're first cousins. And so I do know her, and I just wanted to let you know that I am so very proud of you for all of your accomplishments and the salon and everything.
Absolutely reflected, Queen. Thank you so much.
Yes. And so let me just get into it. I want to know, how long have you had your salon?
So my salon has been in existence since 2002.
Wow.
And prior to that, I was an independent contractor stylist. So, I've been in the game for a minute, and I have been at my current location for a couple of years now. So, I have definitely been through, I've operated as a braider, as a barber, as a loctician, and natural hair care specialist throughout that time. So I've had different specialties throughout that time. Right now, my focus is on locks mainly.
Okay. And so you've been in the business, in the industry over more than 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wow, that's awesome. Okay, and I want to know, what is the most rewarding part about owning and having your own business and having your salon?
The most rewarding part, I would have to say, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one. I'll give you a bevy of things that I really appreciate. One thing is, it's just really a blessing to be able to see how I've been able to positively impact people's lives through hairstyling, through hair care, through the service that I provide. So obviously, my title is hairstylist. I accept a few different titles, but, obviously in a salon setting, there are quite a few things that go on in addition to styling of hair. So there are ideas exchanged. I get to share my perspective, my unique perspective on things, but my clients also share with me. But I would say just the ways in which I've been able to positively impact my clients' lives and sometimes their families' lives. So for instance, probably my most poignant contribution has been a client of mine. She's been my client for quite a few years. Her mother is also my client. Okay. And she started locks with me, and a couple of years into her lock journey, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Okay. So obviously this was a really, upsetting thing. And at this point, she's facing not only the prospect of, this diagnosis with a questionable prognosis, but she's also considering the loss of her hair, which, for a woman could be particularly devastating in addition to everything else. And so what ended up happening is, she started her treatments, and I called her and told her, hey, if you are interested, I want you to save your locks. I want you to either allow them to come out or you can cut them, whichever you prefer. And I want you to save them, and I can both make a wig from your locks for you to wear until your hair grows back. And then also after your treatments are finished, I can reattach your locks to your head. And so, very appropriate because this is actually Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October. But that's exactly what we did. And I could hear just the relief in her voice. This is overall in her journey, this was a small contribution, but she was so relieved to be able to not at least have to worry about that part of the process. And so, when she finished her treatments, she opted not to do the wig. She wanted to just do head wraps during the treatment process.
Right.
But when she finished her treatments, we reattached her locks, and her story is featured on my Instagram, Natural Centric. But we reattached her locks, and they are seamless. We basically picked up right where we left off. So like I said, her locks were 2 years in at that point. So I'll say probably about 6 inches long. And we picked up right where we left off. Her hair is growing, she's healthy, and she was really appreciative of the fact that, again, just one small thing that could be taken off her plate and her process.
Right.
So things like that. So I would say that's one thing, is just, the impact that the positive influence I've been able to have. In addition to that, I would say, it's definitely rewarding to be able to do things on my own terms.
Mm-hmm.
I decide what services I provide. I decide, obviously, how much to charge for them.
Right.
I decide the schedule, essentially, that I want to work. And, obviously, I do try to accommodate clients, but, I also have a family. And
right.
so, I decide if I want to work weekends or not. Right now, the decision is not.
Right.
And so at this point, I essentially work 3 to 4 days. Well, I'm saying work 3 to 4 days. I see clients 3 to 4 days a week. And the other days, I can more so, now obviously I do have other business that I have to take care of, but I can more so determine the hours that I'm in the salon. And in addition to that, I can determine, because I'm very experienced and I have high demand, I can also determine who I want to work with. And so, when clients come in, my process is I have a client to come in. Their initial visit is a consultation only. And so that is for us to discuss what they're looking to get done, and also, the costs involved, etc. But this is also a time we're kind of feeling each other out.
Right.
You want to be comfortable with me as a client, but, we're spending several hours together. I also want to be comfortable with you.
Exactly.
And so, that's a two-way street. And so, yes, there have been times when clients have come in for a consultation, and, there are a multitude of reasons why, but it becomes apparent at some point, maybe we're not a good fit for each other. It's not, anyone's fault necessarily.
Right.
We're just perhaps not a good fit. And sometimes it comes down to scheduling. My schedule is very rigid, so I don't have a lot of flexibility to accommodate, for instance, people who work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Okay.
And so, I would say that is extremely rewarding to be able to choose if I want to deal with this person or that person, and, essentially under what conditions. And so, again, I decide what services I want to provide and kind of to whom,
Right.
But, again, there are times, and there have been also times when, a client relationship has kind of run its course. Sometimes it becomes necessary for the client, because that is their right. But sometimes it becomes necessary for me as a stylist and salon owner to sever the relationship. Sometimes things are just not working out. And, in a business relationship, there should be respect on both sides.
Right.
The client absolutely expects to, receive respect during their service. And I, as the practitioner, I expect
Right.
the same thing. And
Exactly.
so, there are times when, that relationship runs its course. And just like anything in life,
Right.
nothing is permanent. Everything, everything is, I don't want to say conditional, but, things can change.
Right.
And sometimes things are here for us in a particular season. And so, I would say that probably those two things are the biggest rewards so far. And, I have yet to discover all of the rewards that come along with, but definitely I would say a close third would be being able to provide jobs for the community. Of course, I have a particular type of salon, so it is, I think the technical term is ethnic hair. I think that's what it's called now. And so, because my clients are primarily Black men and women, the staff that I hire, typically is also same. And so it is a point of pride for me to be able to provide jobs for my community, for young ladies primarily, but for young people who are looking to obviously enter this industry, but who have varying degrees of experience. And, of course, in our industry, there are people who may or may not have certain types of backgrounds where it may be difficult for them to get other types of employments. What do I mean by that? So, for instance, I have had employees who don't have a lot of formal education. So maybe they have a high school diploma, and maybe they have some additional training. Maybe they've sought a hair license, or maybe they have training where they are not yet licensed. But this is a demographic who, it may be a challenge for them to find another type of employment.
Okay.
And so this is an opportunity for people to flourish. Of course, there are also people who may have had criminal history or certain things in their past that may be an obstacle for them to get other types of employment. And so that's, also something that I've been able to do, is provide jobs for my people.
Right.
And that's been important to me as well. So all of those things have been very rewarding, not without their challenges,
right,
but very rewarding.
I'm just soaking it all in, and just all of that freedom is just, I'm just trying to hold it together. It sounds so good.
It sounds good. Now, let me say, because of course there is always a caveat.
Right.
Now, of course, with business ownership, because definitely it can be glamorous. It can be, you can be in a position where, people are lauding you, and people are seeking you out to do podcasts and to do different things. I've been asked to speak at sorority events, etc. And typically it's about business ownership, and a lot of times it's about, women in business,
right,
and that is very rewarding as well. But, of course, the flip side is, yes, I have had to make a lot of sacrifices. And so, having a family, it can be a challenge, having a family and a business at the same time.
Okay.
But particularly for women business owners. For men business owners, I do think it's a little different. When women are business owners, the situation is different in terms of, the woman, traditionally speaking, is kind of the heart of the home. Right. And so, whereas a male business owner, he may travel, he may work long hours, he may do certain things. And I think people are a little more understanding of that. But when women do it, it is seen differently. And, sometimes the needs of course, your particular family situation comes into play. So for myself, for example, I breastfed my kids exclusively for a time period. And so what that meant as a salon owner and hairstylist is I had to have time throughout my day, right, to excuse myself, to be able to, pump milk, whatever it was. That was extremely important to me, though.
Right.
And not everyone is willing, to make that type of sacrifice. And so there are impacts on both sides. My personal life or family life has impacted my business in some ways, and vice versa. But, saying that to say that, in the end, I do think it's worth it. I do find it particularly rewarding also to be able to have a business that is uplifting to my people in particular.
Right.
So to make, like I said, a difference in the lives of my clients, but in a very particular way, to uplift my people in terms of their aesthetic that has not always been even acceptable to mainstream society. So even before we get to beautiful, it hasn't even been deemed acceptable by mainstream society. Our particular aesthetic, kinky hair, and we can also get into, dark complexion, broad features, all of that. It is definitely a goal of mine to uplift the Black aesthetic, the natural Black aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's important to me to give my sisters and brothers the message that you're already beautiful. You don't need a lot of attachments,
right,
or enhancements, or, surgical procedures,
right,
in order to be beautiful. You're beautiful from day one. And so, that has been another fulfilling aspect of what I do. Again, I am a natural stylist. I am qualified to do other types of hair, to do weaves, to do, silk press. I've chosen not to, because, again, it's really important to me, and that's a part of my business paradigm, is to uplift my people and to help enhance our cultural dignity and our natural attributes. That's extremely important to me. And so, I have been, I think, successful in doing that, and to help raise the visibility of, beautiful natural, what's the word that I want to use, professional natural hairstyles. And of course, we can, this is probably a topic for another day, but we can get a little bit into, the workplace and hair discrimination and bias. But these have been critical. And, I've actually been not just a hairstylist, but also an activist in that vein. And so, definitely these are very important messages, for our community to receive, is that you're already beautiful and you don't need to do unhealthy and frankly dangerous things to yourself to make yourself look a certain way or to be deemed beautiful. So that's extremely important to me as well.
And in your Instagram page, I'm always stalking and I'm always on it because it exudes everything that you're talking about right now. Even my daughter, you were inspiration to her. When I couldn't give it to her necessarily myself, but I knew that I didn't necessarily need a relaxer in my hair. I didn't know that until I became grown and understood, but that was personally for me. But I still do a press and curl. There's still some things, I think it's so many levels to unlocking the things that we have learned and have to relearn and reteach ourselves. And so, again, I want to thank you, especially for the Instagram page, because I was able to show her, what beautiful looks like as far as for her type of hair. We don't have the same type of hair, and that's okay because we come, in so many different varieties, and that's what's so beautiful about us. But when she saw different hair types and she saw, someone who looked like her or whose hair looked like hers, she had no fear. And this is coming from someone in the 4th or, 5th grade. We were petrified, as her parents. We didn't know because we were, explaining to her that having locks is something permanent, we didn't know about, taking them off and being able to reattach them. We only learned those things through you, so we're learning. But, then we were just like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? And she's like, Mommy, I'm sure. Do it, and so now, we look at the benefits now and we're like, oh my God, we should have started this from when you were a baby. Oh my God, it has changed.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm so glad that I've been able to inspire her and other young ladies in particular, because hair is such a loaded topic.
Yes.
among women in general, but in particular for Black women, we're born with this particular unique and beautiful hair texture, but it's so different from not only other ethnic groups, but so different from what mainstream promotes as beautiful. And so we find ourselves in a position of trying to figure out, where do we fit into, the beauty aesthetic? Where are we?
Right.
Yeah.
And that again, that's where you come in and why it's so important what you do. And you're doing a phenomenal job doing it. And
Thank you so much.
by not only Natural Centric, your salon, but also by your Instagram page is so impactful. And I did see you on D.L. Hughley's page, and I was like, okay. So not only do we know, but now celebrities know. So good, get that word out.
Yeah.
You're constantly making us proud, and so continue to keep doing that. And I wanted to kind of piggyback on what you were saying too about your client who had breast cancer, and you were talking about I was telling my daughter we didn't know anything about taking the locks out and being able to reattach them, and also about making a wig. I mean, I'm just, you're
Mm-hmm.
saying these things and I'm like blown away with so many things that you can do. I mean, it's just, you're not just, doing hair. You are honestly changing and impacting people's lives. It's just, I
Thank
can't
you
even,
so
it's
much for saying
phenomenal.
that.
Wow.
I mean, definitely, when I set out to do this, obviously, culture was different. When I first started in the natural hair industry, early 2000s, there wasn't really any example for me to follow as far as people I personally knew.
Okay.
And so, there were people, a lot of people were in New York City, and I just kind of followed them from afar.
Okay.
But it really wasn't a time where, when I first started, people really didn't even know what natural hair was. They
Right.
didn't even understand. I remember people coming to me in the beginning before I had my salon, and maybe they would request different things, and I would explain to them, well, I don't offer those kind of services. And I remember them looking at me perplexed. Well, what do you do? Because people they hadn't at that time even heard of like a two-strand twist or band two
Right.
knots.
Okay.
This is way before YouTube and curly cream, and
Right.
there was no Shea Moisture. None of that existed. And so I definitely, at that time, I stepped out on faith, because of course I could have been a conventional stylist, and absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I could have been a conventional stylist, but I chose to focus in this area for the reasons that you just said, and for the reasons that again, our community has been so impacted by just negative imagery and bias. And so it has been a challenge for, again, Black women in particular, Black girls and women in particular, to embrace their natural aesthetic. And so, I stepped out on faith, because there wasn't really a natural industry at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There were people doing it, but it wasn't really an industry at that point. And so, definitely it was a risky thing to do. And I jumped in with both feet. I was doing it at that time full time. I wasn't relying on, my real job to pay the bills. I actually did from day one. I jumped in full time. And so, it was a rocky road in the beginning, but, I definitely felt like this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Wow.
So.
And we're so glad that you did. We are so thankful. And I have a question for those who are looking to transition, when we see those styles and, we're thinking about it, because, what you're doing is you're planting seeds in our mind. There's things that we weren't necessarily thinking about now that we're now considering doing, because we're seeing other people and how fly your hairstyles look. So for someone who is even thinking about it, what is the best advice you can give as far as transitioning into getting locks or into getting natural hair? I know first unlocking the fear, but what's the best advice that you could give someone thinking about doing it?
My best advice would be to do it under the tutelage of an actual natural hair professional.
Okay.
Now, that is a little bit of a tricky thing to determine sometimes, because as of now, there is not an official natural hair license that is nationwide. And so what that means is each state kind of has different regulations.
Okay.
So some states put natural hair under barbering, some states have a braid license, some put it under cosmetology. So it is a little bit of a challenge to figure out who is actually a bona fide natural hair professional. Now, if you live in an area where that is not an option, and there are really only a few places in the country where there are an abundance of natural hair care professionals. If you live outside of those areas, and essentially those are going to be major metropolitan areas with a high enough Black population. Mm-hmm. So if you live outside of those areas, then obviously using the wonderful tool of the internet can be a good thing. Now, having said that, you still, of course, have to be very careful in terms of finding people who are actually qualified to give you tutelage. And so what you want to do in that case is, if you're following someone online, you want to, of course, look at their hair. You want to look at how they conduct themselves and the words that they use to describe their hair or kinky hair in general. And you want to kind of go past popularity. You know, there are a lot of people who are online, and I'm not going to shout out anyone in particular because I think that it's important for you to have discernment in this area. So when you're looking at someone, let's say someone's YouTube channel or whatever it is, you know, you really want to go past their subscriber number or their viewer number.
Okay.
You want to go past that, and you want to look at, you know, their track record, and if they do have any type of certification, because of course there are professionals who also use these tools to further their message. So in general, you want to look at the actual qualifications of the person. Again, you want to go a little bit beyond numbers and see, does this person have any credential in this area? Or are they just kind of popular and are they just sharing their own tidbits with what they've done with their hair?
Okay.
And that's cool too, but you have to kind of take people with a grain of salt if they don't have actual certificate. Just like any industry, you want people to have actual credentials in the area in which, you know, they're trying to give you any type of information. And so I would say, you know, again, if you live in an area where that's an option, you definitely want to go in and see a bona fide natural hair professional and do so under their tutelage. If you don't live in an area where that's possible, then you know, you definitely want to seek out people who have real credentials online, and, you know, not just popular, but
Right.
seek out people who actually know what they're talking about and have some sort of certification to back up, you know, what they're espousing. Now, as far as using online tools, again, you know, you want to look for certifications, and you also want to look at the language that they use. Is it just kind of fluffy talk, you know, oh, well, I do this and EVOO and ACV, blah, blah, or are they actually talking about hair care, you know,
Okay.
because there are people who are more focused on creating a look versus people who are focused on actually creating healthy hair, because the
Right.
healthy hair is the foundation for all beautiful styles.
Okay.
So, you know, you want to consider that as well. And I would say that, you know, if you're in an area where you have access to actual natural hair care professionals, definitely, hands down, that's the best way to do it, because I definitely have people to come in and they've been DIYing it, but I can tell you it hasn't been going so well. And so and so what ends up happening, they're paying me extra money to undo the things that they've done at home. And to be frank, some of the people coming in to me recently, their bill has been double what it would have been,
Right.
because I have to undo, you know, some of the misinformation that they've received, that, you know, and of course you have to look at everything in a holistic point of view. And so if someone is making a video and their hair looks really good, you do have to also consider, okay, is this person's texture even similar to mine, right? So you can't just kind of look at, let's say, for instance, Tracy Ellis Ross. I think she is launching her own hair care products, and, you know, kudos to her. She's beautiful. She has beautiful hair. However, she does also have a white parent.
Right.
And so
Right.
we have to consider, you know, sometime when we're looking at videos, the person's hair texture is really different from yours. And so you have to consider, are you going to realistically get similar results with, you know, the same type of techniques and products, you know, because sometimes it's just not realistic. And so, you know, that is also a consideration. But if you have access to one, I do also have clients that travel. I have a client that is coming from Texas to see me. I have clients that have moved away and they still travel back. I have a client that moved to Atlanta. She's traveling back to see me. A client coming next week, she lives in Detroit now, and she is not happy with the options that she has in her city. Okay. And so obviously she doesn't come every month, right. But she comes as often as she can. So, you know, traveling is an option for some people as well. You know, say for instance, if you live in where you're from, the South Boston area, say for instance, maybe it's an option for you to travel to like a Raleigh, Durham, or somewhere else, right. Where there is, you know, there are more options in terms of natural hair specialists. Right. So, you know, that's an option for some people. But yes, I would say, you know, if you can't do an in-person with a natural hair professional, next best thing is online. But be careful. Right. Be careful out there.
And with that being said, we're traveling. Have you ever considered going on the road, taking, doing courses, taking your skills on the road to offer like classes to educate and teach? I see some of the stylists are doing that now. Where they're
Right.
pulling up to like major cities and they're taking over their salons and they're teaching, and especially women with alopecia, how to bring it back, how to
Right.
bring back natural hair. And is that
Right. Right.
something that you would ever consider?
Well, it's a consideration. The main reason I haven't really focused on that or started to incorporate that into my business model is because I have a family. I have,
Okay.
my kids are still fairly young, and it's just not the best fit for me right now.
Okay.
But it is something that I would consider, perhaps in the future. And I'm actually considering some online formats for the classes that I'll be teaching very shortly. So,
Awesome.
technology has enabled us to do a lot of things,
Right.
and so I am considering a few different options because I have had a number of people outside of my area to reach out and make those requests.
Right.
So it's something I'm considering, and I have to make sure that it works for my family because the family comes first.
Exactly.
But yes, it is a consideration.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you may be considering that because everybody needs to know about Renee and Natural Centric.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And in your honest opinion, do you feel like natural hair is coming back? Do you think it's finding its way back? What do you think about the hair industry right now?
Well, I do think, and again, I started way before the natural hair trend. So, when I started, like I said, literally people didn't even know what I meant when I said natural hair.
Right.
So I've seen quite a few transitions since then. And of course, it's really exploded since the time period when I first started. So definitely the invention of YouTube and, the internet in general has been a facilitator in broadening the visibility of natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has been actually, probably the number one thing that has been helpful in helping people to feel comfortable in transitioning, right? So that's been one thing. But then in addition to that, there have been, a few headlines that have kind of, I think, gotten people's attention. So we've heard about different situations, and some of them have been, let's say, like hair discrimination or hair bias situations. We had a situation where a young man, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the city, but literally they're cutting his locks off so that he can participate in a wrestling match. Like, what did they think that the locks were going to wrap around his opponent and give him some kind of unfair advantage? Like, that was really weird. And to me, looking at the video, it was a type of assault.
Yes.
It definitely was highly inappropriate, highly racist and biased. And I don't recall a time where we've ever seen anyone outside of our race being treated like that, in order to participate in a sport, having to cut their hair and so violently and so publicly and in such a humiliating way. So, those types of things I think have caught people's attention. And I think there is a part of some people that said, you know what, if this is the way that my community is being treated, maybe it's time for me to start embracing myself more, because there's an opposition for some reason, to our hair. And so maybe that, sometime when you see opposition to something, and especially that is so blatant like that, you kind of question, well, what's so wonderful about it that people are so upset, right? So I really do think that there's been backlash about those situations. People have started to wonder, okay, wait a minute, what is this secret? What is so intriguing about this hair that gets people so up in arms, And so I think that has happened. And I think, of course, along with the visibility has come, of course, there's lots of products now. There's lots of celebrities who have embraced natural hair. And the important thing about the celebrity embrace is it's been a true grassroots movement, natural hair. So what I mean is it's come from the bottom up. The celebrities are looking to us everyday people for natural hair trends. So I've seen Taraji P. Henson, I've seen Regina Hall, I've seen Willow, I've seen lots of people in the public sphere Lupita Nyong'o, who have embraced the styles that we've, as everyday women, that we've been wearing.
Right.
And so that in particular has been very intriguing and impressive to me. So, definitely there have been great strides. And of course, now we're at a point where laws are being changed.
Mm-hmm.
New York City just passed a law. I believe the name of it is New York City Human Rights Law, that grants specific protection in the eyes of the law for people wearing specific types of natural hairstyles. So it specifies afros, locks, braids, etc. That are protected under the law in the workplace. Also, California State, and it's burgeoning and it's on the horizon for the state of Maryland, where I am now too. And so that is only going to spread. And I think a lot of that is because of this higher visibility of natural hair in general. Right. So it's been a beautiful thing, and we're only going to have that. Like, again, that is only going to spread to other states and other jurisdictions. But we do actually, we are making a lot of progress. We do actually need specific protection for natural hair in the public sphere, in the workplace, in schools. And so, again, a lot of these headlines that have been surfacing recently have brought attention to the fact that we really do need specific natural hair protections.
Right. And it's appalling. We're in 2019.
Right.
And our hair is still, I can't. It's hard to fathom. I mean, watching that young man get his hair cut, it literally did something to my soul. Like, I don't know the people who were watching and weren't touched by that, specifically Black people, but it did something to my soul to watch that. And so, oh wow, yeah.
I mean, it was a little bit like, and I definitely mean this with all the intensity that it deserves. To me, it reminded me of a situation like Samson. They cut his hair in a way to me to try to take away his power, and so it was just really, to me, it was that deep. It really was.
Wow, I like
and
that.
Again, and to me, it definitely, the very act was abusive, so to each their own. And I think that, again, that particular situation, I think whether you decide to wear locks or not, I think that a lot of people saw that as an absolute violation.
Right.
And what do locks even have to do with wrestling anyway, right? So, I totally agree with you. I mean, it did something to my soul to see that.
Yeah.
And especially since my sons have locks as well.
Okay, that's right. Your whole family has locks. Is that correct?
Except for my husband, he had locks for 20 years, and he bid them adieu a couple of years ago.
Super long. Oh my
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And you have been featured in a lot of different magazines.
I had my most recent was earlier this year, Sophisticate's Black Hair.
Okay.
I actually had a 4-page bio in the Michelle Obama edition.
What?
Turn up.
Okay.
So I was super proud of that. And as a couple of people pointed out to me, Michelle Obama most likely has all of her covers, at her home, which means my face is probably in the Obama's home.
But of course. Okay.
So that gave me a real kick.
That's awesome, man. That's wow. I'm blown away. Listen, since now that we've gotten a taste of all of the Black girl magic that you offer, so tell us, how can we get blessed by your hands? Where can we find you, and how can we make our appointments?
So in order to get in contact with me, the best way would be via email.
Okay.
So I'll leave my email address, also my website and my Instagram. My email address is naturalcentric. That's NATURALCEN as in Nancy, TRIC @gmail.com. And you can also contact me via the contact page on my website, which is naturalcentric.com. It is under construction, but functional right now, so you can use the contact page there as well. And also via my Instagram page, which is @naturalcentric. and my Facebook page as well, which is Natural Centric Hair Salon. That's the fan page for the salon. So any of those methods of contact, and you can also, of course, see my work there as well.
Okay, and ladies and men, do check her out. She is the truth. I would not lie. And about that name, how did you come up with the name? I see you have the symbol of Africa. How did you come up with the name Natural Centric?
So natural centric is actually a portmanteau of natural and Afrocentric. So it's like a mashup, right?
Okay.
And of course, very appropriately, the motherland has become incorporated into my logo because, obviously this is the central theme of what I do. And so I feel that what I do pays homage to our genetics, our ancestors. And, of course, there's lots of different ways to honor your ancestry, but this is the way that I've chose to honor mine. And so, everything starts with Mother Africa. Everything started, everything comes from the original woman, the Black woman. That is scientifically true. And so, again, this is my way of paying homage to my ancestry.
Yes. Yes, indeed. That's powerful. Yes.
Thank you.
It was my absolute pleasure having you on. I absolutely
Mine as well.
love that you're a boss, that you're a queen, that you handle your business with outstanding professionalism. First of all, from your Instagram to I saw on your recent post, and what you do on Facebook and your social media. Your feedback is always good. The reviews is always good. And so, I beg you, please don't be a stranger to the show. If you have anything coming up or anything you want to share with us, please come back on. We would love to have you.
Okay, great. I have so enjoyed this, Nicole. Thank you so much. I so appreciate what you are doing. I think that, we have similar thoughts about quite a few topics.
Yes, we do.
And so I will be tuning in and promoting you as well. Thank you so much, Queen. And this has been, it's been for my enjoyment and pleasure as well.
I appreciate that.
And so, yes, I will be in contact, and keep doing what you're doing, sis. Keep shining. I absolutely love that, of course, recently there's been a lot of talk about Black women being the biggest demographic in terms of growing demographic in terms of business. Yeah. And so, we out here. We making it happen.
Most definitely. And it's important that we embrace and keep uplifting each other, because,
it is.
A lot of times we all we got. So,
yes, absolutely.
With that being said, thank you again, Renee, for coming on. And I want to thank you, listeners, for listening. This was so phenomenal. And I just want to continue to keep furthering the word and, bringing and presenting people who are, impacting our people especially. And so keep tuning in, and until the next time, you can find me on my website, that is www.thenicoleharrispodcast.com, and I'll see you out there. Peace and blessings.